and welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta Dalal. Today I'm going to ask you a question. It is that when policymakers and the judiciary both fail to understand some of the basics of regulation and accountability, where do we go as citizens? Because remember, all of us invest our money based on the fact that certain people responsible for doing a certain job are going to do it the way it's meant to, honestly, dispassionately, and with fiduciary responsibility. When they don't, people like us who look at companies from the outside and depend on these, people like rating agencies, people like statutory auditors, you can't depend on them having done an honest job. How on earth do you know what is happening inside a company? How do you ever make an investment? So when do you invest? When a statutory auditor says the books of a company are clean, or when a rating agency gives a high rating. So usually you think that if you've got a AAA rating, it's absolutely safe, isn't it? What happens when the rating agency suddenly downgrades it to default within weeks and you're left with an investment which suddenly has no value? Remember, mutual funds, companies and their treasuries and all of us invest tens of thousands of crores on this basis. And because of mistakes, blunders, collusion and corruption, we have lost a lot of money. In fact, I would say that if we add up the numbers, losses in Yes Bank, PMC Bank, IL&FS, Diwan Housing, just name all the NBFCs, banks, shadow banks in the last few years, and don't forget the innumerable brokers who have collapsed. The money that ordinary savers, I'm not even talking about funds, would have lost would be upwards of 25,000 crores. Think about it, because we ought not to be putting up with a system that's as weak as this. And yet, I'm going to talk about two examples today which show you that the more you look for change, the more hopeless it seems to be in India. In my last column, I talked about a little bit of hope because two judgments made us feel a little positive. Just needed a week after that, one day, 6 September, when two orders tell us we're not just back to square one, but we are back to feeling despondent about what is the future. So, the first is the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Remember, it has the Serious Frauds Investigation Office under it. Because of all the failures of statutory auditors colluding with companies, they set up a new regulator. And what happens? The regulator is doing a fairly credible job, being tough, and it is at loggerheads with the ministry. Ministry is trying to undermine it, along with the body of chartered accountants, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, ICAI, which hasn't managed to control its members, discipline them or punish them ever since its inception. Whatever actions it has taken are too few and too feeble to count. What do you say when a Supreme Court order, which is supposed to be settled law, is equally devoid of understanding of basic concepts or how rating agencies work? I'm going to look at both of these. First, let's start with the National Financial Reporting Authority, the NFRA, which is a brand new regulator, and as I said, has been at loggerheads with its administrative ministry, the MCA. NFRA has established a good track record, but this time the bone of contention is apparently consultation paper that it issued in March 2021. This was issued by its Technical Advisory Committee. It's titled Enhancing Engagement with Stakeholders Report. Now, why is there such a furor about it? I think just two paragraphs will tell you what it's about, and I'm going to read them to you. So, para 2.2.3 of the NFRA report talks about two major frauds, 2018 Punjab National Bank Nirav Modi. It talks about infrastructure leasing and financial services and makes a comparison with what has been happening in the UK. It also says that India is not immune to financial scandals. There have been plenty. It names all of them historically, from Haridas Mundra to Harshad Mehta to Trisure India, Ketan Parekh scam, Satyam, Ranbaxy, National Spar Exchange and others, coming all the way to JP Infrastructure, Nirav Modi, IL&FS, Yes Bank, Diwan Housing. And it says how it's brought into focus the role and effectiveness of statutory auditors and independent auditors. The minute it says it wants to focus on them and obviously wants to regulate them, it has done a detailed report on IL&FS. ICAI, the body of chartered accountants, is obviously seen red. So, as I already told you, ICAI has done a poor job, but the government in its wisdom has chosen to appoint a bunch of chartered accountants as part-time members on NFRA. Now, just as brokers used to be against the setting up of the Securities and Exchange Board of India, obviously chartered accountants don't like a body, a regulator that's independent and that they cannot control. We have Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in charge of the Finance Ministry as well as MCA. If she wanted to, she could support NFRA and cut this in the bud by being tough. Apparently that's not happening. In fact, there's a report by N. Sundaresha Subramaniam in the Economic Times that has detailed this ugly war. He filed a right to information query and got some answers about what exactly is the battle between NFRA and the Ministry of Company Affairs. And you would be surprised at what it says. He has other details like the NFRA chairman not even having a driver because they don't make appointments in time. But be that as it may, look at the crux of what he writes about a letter dated 29 June by NFRA to the MCA. It's asking the MCA not to appoint chartered accountants even as part-time members on the regulatory body since they are regulated entities. This would be common sense, right? When SEBI got its statutory powers, one of the first things that it did was to ask stock exchanges to be demutualized and removed broker members from the boards of exchanges. There are no brokers. So why would NFRA have chartered accountants even as part-time members? And why does MCA have to be educated about this 29 years after SEBI got its statutory teeth? SEBI was our first independent regulator. In fact, NFRA minces no words. Here's what it says, and I'm quoting from his article. It's our considered opinion, it's a travesty of independent audit regulation and a mockery of the basic principles underlying the same to have practicing chartered accountants even as part-time members on the authority. Apart from substantive objections to such membership, this also results in appearing to cut at the independence of the regulator. We couldn't agree more. This turf war is not just a turf war between one set of bureaucrats and another. It is a glaring example of how our policymakers and our bureaucrats don't understand basic concepts of regulation, oversight, supervision, and regulatory independence. And this, mind you, when we have set up so many independent regulators which have become sinecures for retiring IAS officers, continue to earn fat salaries and perks for another 5 years. This is what they want. They do not want an independent regulator that helps us, the people. And we have watched one regulator after another being set up in the past 30 years and then being defanged because of this kind of policy. It's reached a stage where loyalty to the administrative ministry and the minister in charge is all that you need. First, to get your posting from being a secretary in that administrative ministry to an independent regulator, a whole-time member, earning fat perks for 5 years, doing what you want to, and then getting repeated extensions to your tenure. It's ironical that so many people who've sat in government and tacitly supported this, in fact encouraged it when it was financial regulators like SEBI, are now waking up to the realization that you need reforms in regulatory bodies to make these independent regulators truly independent. They don't call out specific wrongs. They do not say that the core is you cannot have bureaucrats sitting there who just smoothly move on to become independent regulators. And while they're in the ministry, defang the regulators. Now I'm coming to a second thing, which is credit rating agencies. We've seen repeated failures of credit rating agencies and they suffer absolutely no consequences. Those of you who have been following this video blog regularly know that we are extremely critical of the Securities and Exchange Board of India. We've often said SEBI doesn't act quickly enough or severely enough against wrongdoers. A particularly glaring example is the 2015 co-location scam, where not even all the action has been complete. It's in appeals, and it almost seems as though SEBI really wants to let NSE get away. Now look at what happened when it actually acted. So when SEBI took action against CARE Rating in the Reliance Communication downgrade or ratings fiasco, we actually thought that 25 lakhs was too low a penalty. It was increased to 1 crore. And said, okay, it's not great, but at least SEBI has acted. What happened subsequently will tell you why SEBI regulators or officials working there should be feeling so depressed and wonder what is the point in being tough on market intermediaries and corporate houses if they can simply get their orders reduced to being meaningless. So let's begin with what has been happening in the credit rating agencies. We know that 3 of the 4 top rating agencies have been badly exposed by all these scams that we're talking about, also mentioned by NFRA. Then there is not just IL&FS, Altico, we've already talked about the One Housing. There's Cox and Kings and a whole slew of Anil Ambani companies. SEBI took action on all of them after the fact. So slow, wasn't there before, but fine, took action. In September 2020, SEBI raised the penalty imposed on CARE Ratings, ICRA and India Ratings from 25 lakhs to 1 crore in the IL&FS case. 1 crore is not a big deal, and yet in June 2020, when SEBI imposed a penalty of 1 crore on CARE for taking its time to downgrade Reliance Communication, or what is called RCOM, even after 2 other rating agencies had downgraded it 6 months earlier, RCOM saw red and rushed to appeal to the Securities Appellate Tribunal. CARE had done nothing even after RCOM had been struggling to make interest payments, had defaulted once on principal in 2016. It had issued 2,000 crore worth of non-convertible debentures which were supposed to mature in 2019. But the defaults on interest payments started in 2016. There were delays. Principal also was a problem. 2 other rating agencies woke up and downgraded RCOM, but not CARE. CARE took its time and finally downgraded it in November 2017. 6 months later, as I said, after Moody's Investor Service and Fitch Ratings had done their downgrade. When CARE contested the order, it managed to persuade the Securities Appellate Tribunal to slash the penalty to a mere 10 lakhs. 10 lakhs is a joke. It's not even a slap on the wrist. But what is even more stunning, and which also tells you how little the SAT understood what is the fiduciary role and responsibility of rating agencies, is this one sentence. It says, the charge is one of lack of due diligence. It's not a case where ratings were not downgraded. The ratings were downgraded by the appellant, but not in a timely manner. This could be a case of carelessness or sluggishness or laxity in the manner in which the downgrading was done by the appellant, but it's not a case of oversight. Anyone who understands ratings will be appalled at the enormity of this, because, like I said, thousands of crores are invested on the basis of the rating. 2,000 crores was the NCD issue. If you do not downgrade in time, you do not give people a chance to exit. If you do not downgrade in time, you cajole new investors to come in, not knowing that something is going to default, because things are traded, these instruments are also traded on the secondary market. It's a major issue which SAT didn't even understand. SEBI correctly appealed to the Supreme Court, and you would have thought at least the apex court would hear and get it. Instead, on 6th September, the Supreme Court shockingly dismissed SEBI's special leave petition, allowing the SAT order, 10 lakh penalty, not even a slap on the wrist, to stand. What is more important, the 2-judge bench clarified that this is not going to be a precedent in all cases, but that's hardly of any consequence. The judgment sends out a chilling message that you can rely on ratings at your peril, because there will be many more exceptions like this. This may not be a precedent, but it's bound to come over and over again. There will be rating agencies will really face very few consequences for their bad breach of fiduciary responsibility. In fact, the Standing Committee on Parliament on Finance was supposed to be looking at it. It had called for fresh evaluation of the credit rating framework. But remember that Standing Committee, unlike convention where it used to be headed by an opposition leader, is now headed by Jayant Sinha, who is a BJP MP. Now, what is it when there is a judgment like this from SAT and the Supreme Court? What is the chance that a standing committee headed by the BJP is going to want to embarrass the government at all by raking this up? So, any oversight, even by Parliament, I feel very despondent about. I'm not even sure it's going to happen. Over the past year, past 4 years have been the worst, and in this time, our investor population has almost doubled. More and more people are realizing there's so little interest to be on fixed deposits that they're looking for instruments which give you slightly higher returns, and those instruments would be fixed deposits, would be NCDs, a lot of things where you depend on ratings. And if ratings are going to be treated so lightly, even by the SC, the Supreme Court, what hope is there for us? These are losses that we as investors have to suffer, and there doesn't seem to be any recourse. And I wouldn't even be surprised if the regulator is not in a mood to act any more on rating agencies, because I'm sure the officials working there feel, what is the point? Well, there is a point, and since it affects us, we need to raise our voices. If you feel strongly about this, find a way to make your opinion known. If you like what you've heard, subscribe to Moneylife News Bites and spread the word. Thank you.